Marietta, Georgia, a town wrapped in sunlight and Sunday traditions. On a quiet cul-de-sac lined with trimmed hedges and white fences sits the grandest house on the street, a towering Victorian with blue shutters and a wraparound porch. This is the home of Margaret Washington, or as the church folk call her, Sister Maggie. Every morning, she wakes at 5. Silk robe, fresh coffee, gospel music humming low on the radio. By 6, she's pruning her roses. By 7, she's on the phone, organizing charity events, mentoring young wives, arranging church potlucks. Her name carries weight. Her word settles disputes. When she enters the sanctuary of New Hope Baptist, the room straightens with respect. Maggie Washington is a woman whose life appears flawless. This week marks 10 years since her husband, Samuel Washington, vanished without a trace. The town offered casseroles, prayers, and gentle words. Some said he ran off. Others whispered heart failure. Maggie said God called him home early. The police never found a body, and the case went cold like untouched Sunday tea. Now, she's planning a European vacation. 10 days in France. A new chapter. She's earned it, they say. A woman who's carried so much alone. At the church leadership meeting, she leads the prayer with grace, then settles disputes over renovation funds with a sharp mind and a calm voice. She laughs when the young deacon stumbles over announcements. The room follows her cues. Pastor Michael Thompson watches her carefully, but says little. He always has. Later that evening, Maggie walks into her private study. She locks the door, lowers the blinds. From the bottom drawer of an antique desk, she pulls out a weathered envelope. Inside, an old photograph of Sam, a man with soft eyes and a quiet smile. She turns it over. Written in faded ink, Lake Lanier, 2015. She drives before dawn, past the county line, past where the pavement ends, to the spot no one visits anymore. A clearing by the lake, quiet and damp. She stands alone, staring at the earth where she once stood with a shovel in hand. 10 years ago, she came here to bury the past. Now, something draws her back. Not grief, not guilt, something else. Back home that night, she counts her money. Travel brochures on the table. She hums an old hymn. Then the doorbell rings. She isn't expecting anyone. She opens the door. Standing there is a man, gray around the edges, confused, familiar. He says her name softly, like he said it 1,000 times. Maggie. And just like that, everything she's built begins to shift. This is not the story of a missing man. This is the story of a woman who thought she was finished with the past. But the past isn't finished with her. Before we go deeper into Maggie's unraveling world, if you're into stories that pull you in and keep you guessing, consider subscribing to the channel. And if, somewhere along the line, you find yourself hooked, go ahead and like the video. It tells us you're enjoying it, and helps us bring you even more stories like this one. She doesn't speak at first, just stands there frozen, her hand still gripping the doorknob. The man shifts on his feet, blinking slowly like he stepped into the wrong life. His clothes are worn, a little loose at the shoulders. His hair is thinner now, streaked with gray, but the face that's unmistakable. He says her name again, soft, like he's testing it. Maggie doesn't answer. Her mind reaches for an explanation. A dream, a trick, a ghost maybe. But he's still standing there. He tilts his head, the way Sam always did when he was confused. I thought this was our house, he says. It looks different. She doesn't invite him in, but he walks past her anyway, slowly, like someone returning from a long trip with no bags. He glances at the furniture, the pictures, the cross above the hallway mirror. His eyes settle on the old wedding portrait. He smiles faintly. This was our place, he says. Isn't it? Maggie follows him in, every step careful. She doesn't blink. Her chest is tight. Her hands sweat. She doesn't remember sitting down, but suddenly she's in the armchair. He's across from her, watching. She tries to speak. The words don't come. He looks around again. I've been walking. For a while. Got turned around. Everything feels off. Time's weird. I kept seeing familiar roads, but none of them went where I thought they would. She watches as he runs his fingers across the bookshelf. He stops at a photo of them at Lake Lanier, picks it up, smiles again. I was thinking about this place the whole time. That day by the lake. The picnic. You made peach cobbler. She hadn't told anyone about that day. Not the picnic. Not the cobbler. Not what happened after. She stands abruptly, walks to the kitchen, opens a cabinet, closes it. She does it again, as if the motions might clear her head. From the hallway, his voice drifts. You look good, Maggie. You look the same. She stares at her reflection in the kettle. Her hands grip the counter. She's shaking. Later, in the study, she opens the safe. Stacks of money. Retirement funds. Life insurance. All of it legal now. She planned every detail. Waited the required years. Signed the papers. Claimed the loss. They said it was time to move on. She was supposed to be packing tonight. Paris in 2 weeks. A vineyard tour in Bordeaux. The tickets are on her desk. So is her passport. She slides them into a drawer. Back in the living room, he's sitting quietly, looking through her photo albums, laughing gently at old church banquet pictures, whispering names from the past. His memory sharp. Too sharp. She asks where he's been. He shrugs. I don't know, he says. I remember driving. Then I remember waking up somewhere cold. No windows. Then nothing. Just walking. Thinking. She asks how he got here. He smiles. Just followed the road. It brought me home. She doesn't sleep that night. At dawn, she stands outside the guest room. She listens. No sound. She opens the door. The bed is made. No sign of him. No suitcase. No shoes. Only the wedding photo. Moved from the hallway. Sitting on the nightstand beside the pillow. Her breath catches. And for the first time in years, Margaret Washington begins to doubt what she buried. And who? She buys a disposable camera. One of those old ones from the gas station. Doesn't want anything digital. Nothing that sinks. She waits until he's asleep on the porch swing. Head tilted. Eyes closed like he belongs there. She snaps a photo. Just one. Then 2 more. From different angles. No flash. Later that night, she develops them in a 1-hour lab across town. The clerk hands her the envelope without looking up. She slides the photos out in her car. The chair is empty. The porch swing has no figure. Just shadows. The light catches the edges of the house, the outline of her rose bush, but nothing else. The same for the other 2. She checks the negatives. They match. She returns home slowly, holding the photos like evidence in a trial no one's ready to call. At church that Sunday, Maggie's steps falter. She fumbles her hymn book, forgets the final prayer, calls the wrong scripture during announcements. She never makes mistakes. Eyes glance toward Pastor Thompson. He watches, silent. After the service, he pulls her aside in the vestibule. He asks if everything is all right at home. She says she's tired. Just stress. He nods, but doesn't believe her. He doesn't say it, but she knows the way he's looking at her. The last time he looked that way was 10 years ago. The night he came to tell her the search was over. That same evening, Maggie notices a car slow near the corner of her block. A black sedan with one headlight dimmer than the other. It doesn't stop. Just lingers. Then moves on. She sees it again the next day. And again the day after. Detective James Carter retired 2 years ago. But the case never left him. Not really. He still visits old scenes. Still reads through old reports. Sam Washington's file stays on his desk, under a stack of unopened mail. He hasn't opened it in months. But he keeps it there. Just in case. Now he's driving past Maggie's house again. He tells himself it's routine. A habit. Muscle memory. But when he sees her through the window, standing in her living room, holding something close to her chest, not moving, he feels it again. That old itch he never could shake. He circles the block one more time. Maggie closes the curtain. Her hands tremble. Not from fear. From something else. A question she hasn't asked in years. What if this isn't over? What if it never was? He hums while sweeping the back porch. The same tune every morning. Maggie listens from the kitchen, motionless. It's their wedding song. A hymn they danced to alone at the reception, after everyone left. No one else knew it, not even her sister. At dinner, he brings up a joke they used to share. Something about the first time she burned rice. He laughs like it's still funny. She doesn't respond. She never told that story again after the funeral. Not once. Not to anyone. She begins recording him with her old camcorder. She doesn't trust her phone. She films him walking across the yard, setting down the watering can, adjusting his belt the way Sam always did. Later, she rewinds it. The screen shows only her garden, the can on the ground. No man. The footage skips, resets, blurs at the edges, like the tape is rejecting what it sees. She records again the next day, from inside the house, this time while he reads on the couch. A hardback novel Sam never finished. The one he left on the nightstand the week he disappeared. He quotes a passage word for word. That night, the footage cuts out at the moment he looks toward the lens. She stops recording. On Tuesday, he says he wants to go to church, just for a quick hello. He says people will be happy to see him. She says it's not a good idea. He insists. She tells him to wait until Sunday. She'll think of something by then. But that afternoon, he walks to the church anyway. Alone. She follows behind her car, staying 2 blocks away. She sees him stop in front of the building. He doesn't go in, just stands there, looking up at the steeple. A few members walk past. One of them waves. He nods politely, but no one reacts. No one recognizes him. Back at home, he asks if the piano is still tuned. Says he wants to play something next Sunday. For the congregation. She says the piano's broken. He tests a few keys. They work fine. She tells him the church isn't the same. That it's changed. He laughs. No, it hasn't. You haven't either. She doesn't sleep. She goes through old mail, bills, donation receipts, a thank you card from a missionary in Liberia. She opens her laptop, searches for recent obituaries, looks through the church website. There are no entries for Sam. No mention of his name on the memorial page. Only her photo, smiling in the leadership team gallery. She considers calling the pastor, then deletes the number from her phone. The next morning, he asks what happened to his Bible, the leather-bound one with the note from his mother. She says it must have been lost. He walks straight to the attic, brings it down 10 minutes later. The note's still inside. She counts her steps as she walks, keeps her routine precise. Movement helps her think. He asks why there are no recent pictures of them together in the house. She changes the subject, says the lighting was always bad. Later, she sits in the garden, staring at the birdbath he installed the summer before he died. There's a small crack on the edge. He points it out. She never noticed it before. And still, every night, he sleeps peacefully. And every morning, he remembers things she wishes he didn't. He doesn't call ahead, just knocks on the door like it's any other day. Maggie opens it with a practiced smile. Her voice is even, but her hand grips the doorknob tighter than necessary. Detective Carter says he's revisiting old cases, tying up loose ends. Nothing official. He steps inside. The room smells of lemon polish and lavender. Everything in its place. She offers tea. He declines. He glances at the photos on the wall, the clean cushions, the untouched fireplace. He asks how she's been. She says fine, busy with church work. He asks if she ever hears from Sam's family. She says no. Not since the funeral. There was no funeral. He lets the lie sit. He looks past her shoulder, toward the back window. He asks if she lives alone. She says yes. He nods, then takes a long look around. Carter leaves 20 minutes later, without asking the real questions. But she knows he wanted to. After he drives off, she checks every room. Sam is gone. His shoes are by the door. His cup on the table. The imprint of his weight still in the couch cushion. But he is nowhere. She calls out, softly at first, then louder. Nothing. The silence presses in. An hour passes before he returns, stepping in from the garden like he never left. He says he went for a walk. She doesn't ask where. That night, she locks her bedroom door. 3 days later, Grace calls. No greetings. No pleasantries. Just a question. Did someone come back? Maggie denies it. Grace laughs once, dry and sharp. She says she's been dreaming again. Says she can smell Sam's cologne when she wakes up. Says she never believed he just walked off. Says the timing never sat right. Neither did Maggie's grief. They don't speak again for 2 more days. Then Grace shows up outside the church. Just stands there after service, speaking to no one, watching Maggie from the sidewalk. Maggie walks the long way to her car. The next morning, a letter arrives. No return address. Just one line inside. Inheritance cleared. No further documentation required. She reads it twice, then burns it in the sink. The following week, 2 men in suits arrive at her door. They ask about an audit from 8 years ago, about large transfers made from a joint account, about how the insurance payout was used. They say it's standard, a routine cross-check. She says she gave most of it to the church, donations, overseas missions, scholarships. They nod, take notes. They leave quietly. Maggie watches from the window until their car is gone. She turns to find Sam behind her, holding the very letter she burned. He asks if she's planning another trip. She doesn't answer. He places the envelope on the table, says it's good to plan ahead, then walks away. She stares at the paper. The edges are still warm. She waits until dawn. The road to Lake Lanier is quiet that time of morning. No one sees her leave. She takes the long route through the trees, parked far enough not to be noticed. The ground near the grave is exactly how she left it, undisturbed, overgrown, settled. She brushes away the topsoil just to be sure. The wooden marker is still there, half rotted, just beneath the surface. The air smells the same. She doesn't cry. She doesn't speak. She just stares at the patch of earth that holds the man, now walking through her house. When she returns home, Sam is in the kitchen making breakfast. He hums a tune only he would know. She doesn't sit. She walks past him, picks up her phone, and scrolls to the photo she took of him the night he returned. It's blank, pure white, no image. The rest of her gallery is fine, only the photos of him gone. She checks the security footage next. The backyard camera, the hallway, the front door. Every clip from the last 4 days plays without error, until Sam enters the frame. Then static, corruption, a black screen. She tries uploading a video of him to her cloud storage. It freezes mid-process, then deletes itself. She tries again. Same result. She tries a 3rd time. Now the file won't even open. She asks Sam to sit for a picture. He laughs and agrees. She clicks. The shutter goes off. But when she checks the image, nothing. Just an empty chair. That afternoon, she's late for the church leadership meeting. The others are already seated. She walks in with her notes, avoiding eye contact. Pastor Thompson doesn't open with prayer. He clears his throat and places a folded bulletin on the table. It's from 2015, Sam's memorial service. He slides it toward her. He asks how she's holding up. She nods. He asks if everything at home is normal. She says yes. He waits, then asks if she's seen him. She doesn't reply. The room is silent. Nobody moves. Finally, Pastor Thompson leans forward and says, "A few members say they saw someone outside your house. Said he looked familiar." She says they were mistaken. He asks again. She says nothing. He ends the meeting early. She walks out without saying goodbye. At home, she opens her journal, writes down everything Sam has said to her since he returned. His memories, his words, the details only he would know. She reads it back to herself 3 times, then tears the pages out. She burns them, one by one. That night, she sits at the foot of her bed. She rehearses the truth under her breath. Once, then again. She dials a number, then hangs up before it rings. She walks to the bathroom, looks in the mirror. She says his name. He answers from the hallway. She turns toward the door, but no one is there. She finds him in the den, sitting in her late father's recliner. No TV on, just silence. He asks if she remembers the casserole that night, the way she insisted he eat more, the glass of wine that tasted slightly off, the second helping he didn't want but took to please her. He recalls the sudden dizziness, the way the walls seemed to tilt. He remembers falling. She tells him to stop. He doesn't. He says he remembers her standing over him, saying it would all be better soon. He remembers her crying, but not in fear. It was relief. She whispers that he's lying. He looks her in the eye and repeats the last thing he said before he blacked out. "I don't feel right, Maggie." She leaves the room. She doesn't sleep. The next morning, a black SUV parks across the street. Same as every week. But this time, it doesn't leave. Detective Carter knocks at her door. He says he was in the area. Routine follow-up. Nothing formal. He glances past her, into the house. She blocks the doorway. He tells her the case file never sat right with him. Too neat. Too clean. Declared dead without a body. No confirmed sightings, but no evidence of a crime either. A man doesn't just vanish, he says. Especially not one like Sam. She doesn't respond. He asks if she's been well. She nods. He smiles, then lowers his voice. Says the cameras were updated last year, neighborhood-wide. That new city grants made it possible. High-definition footage. Night vision. Audio pickup. He pulls out a small tablet. Taps the screen. A grainy clip plays. It's her porch. Late at night. She's standing outside, talking to someone just out of frame. A man's voice answers. Soft. Familiar. She stares at the screen. He asks if she recognizes the voice. She says no. He slides the tablet back into his coat. Says more footage is being reviewed. Then says something strange. Says he spoke with Grace Williams the other day. She flinches. He says Grace has been patient. She never stopped asking questions. Always believed there was more to the story. Claimed Sam would never leave her behind. Said she could feel he was still here somehow. He says Grace came to him 2 years ago. Brought old letters, photos, a journal. Said she was willing to help, no matter what it took. He tells Maggie that Grace visits the station once a month, like clockwork. Always with something new. A receipt. A detail. A pattern. He says she never gave up. Maggie shuts the door before he finishes. Inside, she paces the hallway. Sam's voice echoes from the den. Humming again. That same wedding tune. She walks past the mirror in the hallway. For a moment, she thinks she sees Grace's reflection instead of her own. She doesn't look back. In her room, her phone lights up. A message. From an unknown number. It reads, "You remember more than you admit. So do we." She deletes it, but it reappears. She watches him sleep. The lines on his face. The slow rise and fall of his chest. The softness in his breathing. It all matches. But something never felt quite right. She studies old photos. Compares his smile. His walk. His voice. Too close to question, but too exact to trust. The next evening, she returns from the church meeting and finds Grace waiting on her porch. No warning. No smile. Grace doesn't ask permission to speak. She simply begins. She says the man inside isn't Sam. She says his name is Marcus. Her son. Maggie doesn't react. Grace continues. She says Marcus was 23 when she told him the truth. That his uncle didn't walk away. That Maggie had something to do with it. That the story never made sense. That she always believed Sam had been taken from her. She says she spent the next 5 years preparing Marcus. She says she taught him everything Sam ever loved. Every story. Every habit. She says she showed him Sam's handwriting. His favorite scriptures. The exact way he tied his ties. She says he studied Sam's voice from home videos. Practiced until it cracked the same way when he laughed. Learned to walk like him. Breathe like him. Think like him. She says it wasn't enough. So she found a doctor. One who didn't ask questions. She says there was no need for drastic changes. Just time. Patience. A few adjustments to the brow, to the nose bridge, to the way his jaw sat when relaxed. Small details. All designed to echo memory, not precision. She says the result was close enough. She says Maggie believed it because she needed to. Guilt wants a ghost it can recognize. She says Marcus knew the risk. That the performance would take more than pretending. It would take becoming. She says Maggie made it easy. She gave herself away. She says Marcus knew to ask about their wedding song. He knew to mention the missing china set from the anniversary Maggie tried to erase. He knew what to say when she brought up the summer house in Charleston. How to fake a memory that never belonged to him. Grace says she fed him those memories herself. Every Sunday afternoon, every sleepless night. She says he didn't flinch because he didn't have to lie. He only had to believe. Maggie finally speaks. She says it was all a waste. She says the body is still buried. Grace nods. She says she knows. She says that's why this isn't over. Not yet. The truth, when it finally surfaced, was quiet. Sam died on a Tuesday evening, seated at the end of the dining table, still wearing his church slacks. Maggie had made his favorite, oxtail and rice, with some casseroles on the side. She poured the wine, smiled as he said grace, and then watched as he took the first sip. He never reached for the second. The poison worked fast. His words trailed off mid-sentence. He looked confused, then frightened. Within minutes, he was gasping, then silent. She didn't panic. She waited. When he stopped breathing, she pulled the curtains shut, left the food on the table, took his body, wrapped in a tarp she had folded neatly in the laundry room days earlier, and loaded it into the trunk of her car. No one saw her leave. She drove to the edge of Lake Lanier, far from the usual fishing spots, to a clearing hidden by years of overgrowth. The shovel was already in the trunk. The grave had been dug the day before under the pretense of a landscaping project. It took longer than she expected. The soil was heavy from the rain. By the time she returned home, the sun was almost rising. She cleaned the house top to bottom, burned the tarp in a barrel behind the tool shed, washed his plate, erased every trace of the evening. Then she waited one more day. On Thursday morning, she walked into the local sheriff's office with tears in her eyes and said her husband hadn't come home the night before. Claimed they'd argued about finances. Said she assumed he needed air, but now she was worried. She handed over an old photo, mentioned his favorite jacket, acted surprised when they asked about his cell phone, claimed he didn't like to carry it. The community came out in search. Flyers went up. The church prayed, and Maggie played the grieving wife with stunning grace, attending search parties, answering questions, delivering cookies to the volunteers. Days passed, then months. When a year went by and Sam's license expired without renewal, she quietly began the paperwork. 7 years after that morning, the state declared him legally dead, and the check came in. $2 million, wire transferred to the joint account she never closed. She kept the name on it. She liked seeing his beside hers. But Grace never bought it. She knew her brother. He wouldn't vanish. Not from his pulpit. Not from his family. Not from her. And Maggie had changed too quickly. She'd cut off regular calls, stopped inviting Grace over for dinner, turned cold every time his name was brought up. So Grace started digging. Not just memories, but files, phone records, receipts. She followed Maggie one early morning, saw her at the lake, saw her pause by a thicket of trees and stand in silence for 10 long minutes, saw her whisper to no one. Grace didn't say anything. Not then. Instead, she started planning. Quietly, carefully. And when she introduced her son Marcus to Detective Carter under a false name, they both knew it would take time. They both agreed it would be worth it. By the time the walls finally closed in, Maggie was already unraveling. She stopped sleeping. Her routines grew erratic. She avoided church gatherings, canceled meetings, snapped at members of her committee. The mirror became her enemy. She'd stare for minutes at a time, sometimes whispering to herself, sometimes laughing under her breath like she'd heard a joke no one else could. Then one evening, after a short, strained dinner with Grace and Pastor Thompson, Maggie stood up mid-conversation, walked to her study, and locked the door behind her. She picked up her old dictaphone, the same one Sam used to record his sermons. She pressed record. And she spoke. She confessed to everything. The planning, the months of pretending, the slow build-up of resentment. How Sam's simplicity felt like suffocation. How she hated the way he still ironed his shirts on Saturdays. How he prayed over their meals. How he never wanted to travel, never wanted more. How she felt trapped in a life that worshipped humility when she wanted power, comfort, control. She spoke about the poison, how long she'd researched it, how she waited for the perfect moment, knowing no one would suspect her, knowing the church would protect its own, knowing that grief, if performed well enough, would keep the questions away. She admitted the truth of the burial, of the lies she told in the sheriff's office, of how, at first, she felt free. She said the money wasn't even the goal. Not at the beginning. It was the silence afterward, the peace, the control. But the money came, and with it a new identity. European vacations, private retreats, speeches at women's conferences. Her sermons shifted from forgiveness to ambition. She became the face of discipline, of strength, of divine favor. She called it purpose. But in the recording, her voice trembled when she said it. The weight of it all had begun to sink in. When she handed the recorder to Detective Carter the next morning, she didn't say a word. She didn't ask what would happen next. She just watched his hands as he placed it into an evidence bag. Later that day, the church board received a formal letter of resignation, and on Sunday morning, Grace stood in Maggie's usual spot at the front of the sanctuary, opened her Bible, and began reading from the book of Amos, a passage about justice, one that Maggie had once skipped during a sermon. She never skipped it again. Detective Carter didn't need to say much when he returned to Maggie's home. He carried the warrant in one hand and the recorder in the other. Maggie was calm. She stood as he entered, hands already folded in front of her, waiting. The arrest was quiet. No struggle, no tears, just a long stare between her and Grace, who stood nearby with Marcus. It was the first time all three of them had stood in the same room, without pretending. Word spread faster than any sermon ever had. Within hours, whispers turned to headlines. Respected church leader arrested for husband's murder. Congregants who once praised her began replaying old conversations in their minds. The smiles, the speeches, the certainty in her voice. And beneath it all, the secret they never guessed. Some said they always felt something was off. Others defended her until the evidence was played out loud during her arraignment. The truth didn't need embellishment. Grace sat through every hearing. Quiet, poised, never missing a single session. Not for revenge, for clarity, for her brother, the one she knew wasn't just missing, the one whose name was spoken less and less as the years passed. When the conviction came down, she didn't cry. She nodded once and looked at Marcus. Marcus, the man who gave up his name, his history, his freedom, so a truth could be dragged into the light. He hadn't just worn Sam's face. He had carried Sam's memory, studied his voice, memorized family recipes, recalled fishing trips he never went on, stories he only knew from Grace's tears and faded photographs. He lived a lie to tell the truth. Now he walks freely again, but not as Marcus, and not as Sam. Somewhere between both. A man changed by choice, shaped by sacrifice. Justice didn't come quickly, but when it did, it was sharp, clean, final. The kind of justice that makes you rethink how well you know someone, even when you've prayed beside them for years. Justice didn't come quickly, but when it did, it was sharp, clean, final. The kind of justice that makes you rethink how well you know someone, even when you've prayed beside them for years. If you found this story gripping, don't forget to like this video. It helps more people discover powerful stories like this one. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss what comes next. Drop a comment below and tell us, at what moment did you first suspect Maggie? And if you're hungry for more stories that keep you guessing, check out the rest of our channel. Stay with us. The end screen has more videos handpicked just for you.